Tiadi, Vagas Falchigo di Terra Incogweirdo Mokarjas, hello, and welcome to Terra Incogweirdo and part 2 of Rock and Roll Drive-bys. I should have shown you guys this last time, but there is my brother with Robert Palmer. My brother had a radio show called The Roots Cafe that this was after he got out of working at the radio stations, and he did this radio show out of I believe it was Harford County Community College on Mondays and Saturdays, and it was a great show. I think this photo of him and Robert is from the QSR days, probably. So, okay, Rock and Roll Drive-bys Part 2. Just a quick recap. My bro, Steven, was a DJ in Baltimore during the 70s and 80s and into the early 90s. And as a result, I got to meet a lot of rock stars and musicians. Just, kind of mostly in passing. There were one or two that I got to know pretty well, but mostly it was just in passing, and that my brother got me stage passes often, and that also just because nothing scared me, and I would just, even if I didn't have a stage pass, I would just walk right backstage. Oh geez, I remember I did that at the 9:30 Club during a Nirvana show. Yeah, so I just walked right backstage and sat on down till they realized I was not supposed to be there, and they kicked me out, but that was like almost an hour later, so who cared? So anyway, we're going to go back to the early days when I was a teenager. I told you guys last time about Cheap Trick, and I got my first beer from Tom Peterson and my first kiss from Robin Zander. This happened about the same time. This was in January or February of 1980. And I went to see AC/DC, and Pat Travers band opened for them. And this was about a month before Bon Scott died. And that's why I remember the date with such specificity. Now, I like AC/DC, but they're not amongst my favorite groups. And I actually went to the show because I love Pat Travers' band. Again, Auntie Angie loves her guitar players, so Pat Travers was a very guitar-driven band. So while I watched the, Pat Travers open, and they were amazing, they were very good live, and AC/DC came on, and they were great. They were rocking it, but I wanted to meet Pat Travers. So I went outside. This was at the Towson Center in Towson, Maryland. That actually is where I met Cheap Trick as well. So I went outside and I started to walk around the building, and there's nobody there keeping you from walking around the building. This was the Towson Center was a sports complex for Towson State University. So it's a pretty big building, and I'm just walking around the outside, and I'm almost all the way around the building, and I start walking parallel to this big tall brick wall, and I can see in front of me the tour buses, and one says AC/DC, and the other one doesn't say anything, so I know that's Pat Travers' bus, and that's the one I'm making for. So I'm making a beeline for that bus, and there's the brick wall ends, and then there's a sidewalk that's leading up to where the buses are. So I'm making for that sidewalk so I can go up to the bus. And as I come to the end of the wall and I step onto the path, I run right into Pat Thrall. Okay, Pat Thrall was Pat Travers' dual guitar player. They both played guitar, and so, I literally collided with him. It was like, oh, I'm sorry. How are you? And he's like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, wow, it's, and of course I was very excited to meet him, and told him that, I was out here because I wanted to meet him and Pat Travers. So he took me to the bus, and like a responsible gentleman, he did not take me on to the bus, which was very good because I think I was how old would I have been in, let's see, 73, I would have been 17 years old, so right there on the edge of legality. So he brought Pat Travers down off of the bus, and so me and Pat Travers and Pat Thrall stood around and had a very nice conversation. So that was awesome. Again, I'm very enthralled with guitar players, so that was a great meet for me. That just made something else pop into my mind that I didn't have written down, because I have written down the ones I want to cover today, but I'm going to tell this one because it just popped into my mind. Around the same time I was in high school, I went to see Asia with a friend of mine, and I would say at that time in my life, Rush and Yes were constantly vying for number one position, as the band that I liked the most. I had just graduated out of like my Styx, Cheap Trick sort of phase, and now I was really into Rush and Yes at this point. So in case you don't know, Asia was a supergroup comprising several of the members of Yes, and that's why we ended up there. And again, because Auntie Angie loves her guitar players, I love Steve Howe. What an amazing guitar player. And I'm laughing because he's so fun to watch. He makes the craziest faces when he plays it. Like, his whole body plays the guitar and his face plays the guitar. And if you've never seen Steve Howe play the guitar, do yourself a favor and watch him, because he's amazing. So it was after the show, and we were standing outside, and the limos pulled up for the band to get in. Or no, it was the opposite. It was before the show, and the limos pulled up for the band to get in, and we were standing outside, and my friend, tiny, tweensy little girl, like just over 4 feet. I'm sorry, just under 5 feet tall, or maybe just over 5 feet tall. She was not very large, and I had her in front of me, and there was like a whole crowd of people behind us, and the car just happened to pull right up in front of where I was standing with my friend. So the car door opens, and Steve Howe is sitting right there, okay? And at that moment, the crowd just rushed and pushed us forward. So I fell into my friend, and I literally pushed her head first into Steve Howe's lap. Oh my God. I'll never forget the look on both of their faces. They were just, my friend's head comes out of Steve Howe's lap, and Steve just kind of like, and we were both like, wow, we really wanted to meet you, but maybe not this close and personal. I completely forgot about that. Oh my God. Just popped right back into my brain. Okay, so that's the time when I met Steve Howe of Asia. At that point, he was not playing with Yes. Okay. So the next story I want to tell you is about Styx. Now, this probably happened this happened the same year as the Cheap Trick, so I would have been 14 at the time, but I was really into painting murals on my walls. And I always painted murals of like rock and roll album covers. Now, by the time I was done, I had 2 murals. I had the first Rush album, huge, taking up an entire wall, and then I had Permanent Waves, again, taking up an entire wall, and then I had the longest wall in my bedroom. I had the Rainbow Heartbeat from the inside of Dark Side of the Moon, and I had Pink Floyd painted like the logo is painted on the wall. And on another wall, I had Yes songs, and I had one of, the artist's name just flew out of my head. Roger somebody. I had one of his like sort of Leonardo da Vinci looking airplanes from Fragile, and Yes songs like painted, and then the airplane beneath it. And then on another big wall, I had a mural for the band Styx that I created myself. Okay, so this was a scene of the underworld where the Lord of the Underworld is standing next to the river Styx, and he's got a cloak on with his hood up, and you're looking at his back, and the Styx logo is on the back of his crimson cloak, and he's holding his hand up in the air, and the S from the Styx logo is in his hand, and it's shooting out beams of light, indicating that this S is the light source for Hades and for the underworld. And so you see the river Styx in front of you, it's purple, and then the mountains of purgatory on the other side. Okay, and I just happen to have a photo of it. I have me and my friend from high school are sitting in front of it, so it's partially obscured. Me and my friend Phoebe. Hi, Phoebe. I love you. I haven't talked to Phoebes in a long time. And we both have stuffed animals on our head, okay? So it's a little obfuscated, but I think you can get the idea here. Let me bring this over. Oh, it's being difficult. Give me a second. Sorry, guys. Okay, let's see. Okay. So, all right, there you go. Let's trying to get the glare off of it. I think that's about as good as I can do. Okay, so that was my Styx mural. Boy, did my mom love that. Let me tell you, painting murals on my walls. But hey, if it kept me out of trouble, I guess she preferred that. So I went to see Styx. Now, my sister took me, and I did get to sit in the orchestra pit for the show, but I did not go backstage to that show. We didn't have backstage passes. Now, something happened in the show that forever gave me a thrill, okay? I think I was the only person in the orchestra pit that knew every single note and every single word to every single Styx song. And I was obviously completely into it and standing on my feet and singing and everything. And all the other people were like music, who were in the orchestra pit. There weren't a lot of people there. Like I had like half of the orchestra pit to myself. And everybody else was on the other side. And then there was me standing on one side of the orchestra pit. And everybody else was like in the music industry, or they were, backstage Bettys. Okay. So they didn't want to be associated with the over-the-top Styx fan that I was at the time. So I'm standing there, totally digging the show, and JY is the really tall, like football player, broad-shouldered guitar player in Styx, and JY locks eyes with me, and he gives me his best impression of Gene Simmons. He gives me one of these. I nearly jumped out of my skin. And I'm 14, and, flat as a board. I mean, nobody even knew I was a girl at that point. And I'm like, well, he can't be. That couldn't have been meant for me. So I look like around me to see like who he's wagging his tongue at. And I look behind me and I look back at him and I go, me? And he goes, oh my God. 14 years old, I did not know what to do with the feelings that facial expression engendered in me. That happened to me a couple times, where being in the proximity of a rock star just like brought my hormones to the fore, but my hormones were at that point an undiscovered country, so it was all very confusing. That happened when I met Robin Zander and he kissed me. It happened when JY wagged his tongue at me, and it happened again when I met Rush, and I'll tell you that story in a minute. But I would say, okay, well, that photo that I showed you, I had another one without me and my friend in front of the mural. But that photo that I showed you, the mural, there was a girl there in the orchestra pit, and I showed it to her, and she thought it was awesome. So she took it backstage and she showed it to Styx, and she called me the next day and told me that they loved it and that they were really sorry they couldn't meet me and tell me in person. So that was pretty cool. And, you know, she mailed it back to me. So that was pretty cool. But I did get to meet Styx later on, and that was because of the auspices of the girl I'm about to tell you about now. Now, this is the best part of probably any rock story that I have, is that I made one of my best friends in the world, my BFF forevers, through Styx. Okay, and okay, I used to have tons of pen pals, all right, over 1,000 at one point, and the girls in America started this thing they're called friendship books, FBs, and they were just little books that you would put together, you know, with notebook paper and staples, and you would write down your name and address and the bands that you liked, right? And if you were taking more pen pals or not. And then you would send it to one of your pen pals, and they would fill it in, and they'd send it to the next person and the next person. And when the whole thing was full, on the very back of the book, there would be the address to send it back to. And then the last person to sign it would send it back to you, and then you'd have this whole book of people's names and addresses and what bands they liked and if they wanted pen pals or not. So it was flippin' awesome. And that is how I guess my dearest darling friend Tanya and I think it was FBs where we first saw each other. It would have had to have been, because we were not pen pals at this point. I came home, okay, this is a point in my life where I was like, professionally, I was riding horses for other people. Okay, so I was often out at the barn. I was working or exercising somebody's horse, so I was often not around. And I was 16. I had just started driving, and one day I came home from the barn, and my mom handed me a letter, and she said, "This girl came to the door today." She says her name is Tanya, and she knows you from FBs, whatever they are, and that she was on her way through. She's following Styx around the country, and she just wanted to meet you. And so that's how, even though I did not get to meet Tanya that day, Tanya ended up being one of my best friends, and she still is. I love you, Tanny Rocker. You are the most amazing girl in the land, and probably the biggest fan Styx has ever or will ever have. So in the early 2000s, all that happened on the East Coast where I grew up around Baltimore. So in the early 2000s, I moved to the West Coast in California, and that's where Tanya was living. And she invited me to come and see Styx with her somewhere. Actually, it was Lincoln City, Oregon. Yeah, because I wasn't living in Oregon then. I was living further down the coast, and that was the first time I ever drove up the coast. It was amazing. So Tanya got us backstage, and I finally got to meet Styx, and I got to tell JY about him wagging his tongue at me, and I got to give Tommy Shaw a big kiss and tell all of them that they were heroes, my heroes, and primarily, I love their music, but they were primarily my heroes because of the beautiful way that they treat Tanya. They have always treated her with the greatest love and utmost respect, and I love Tanya more. She's one of the top 5 people in my world, and I just love the way they love Tanya, and to me, that's the best thing about Styx. Okay, so here's a photo of me and Tanya meeting Styx. There's JY on the right, then there's me, and then there's Tommy Shaw, and then there's Tanya, and then there's the other members of the band. So, sorry about the glare, guys. Let me try. It's not working very well. Huh. Well, here, let me pull back a little bit. Not any better? Is that any better? All right. In any case, I assure you that's who's in that picture. Okay, so that's my Styx story. All right, meeting Rush, 1979. Okay, well, you may have seen the short that I put up on August 27th for Alex Lifeson's birthday, and this is the same story that I told in that short. So I had gone up to New York City to visit my friend Stevie, and we went to see Rush at the Palladium, and we had nothing to do that day, so we got there at 11 o'clock in the morning, and there was nothing to do, so we were just standing in the alleyway in the back, and we were talking to the roadies as they were loading the instruments and the speakers and everything, and got talking to one of them, and he was from Maryland, and he was so excited that I was from Maryland that he tried to get us backstage passes. Alas, he was not able to, but he was a great guy. I mean, we just had so much fun talking and exchanging Baltimore isms. You meet somebody in a different part of the world. It wasn't that far from Baltimore, but still, it's always nice. We had a good time chatting. So as we were standing there chatting with the roadies, Rush pulled up for their sound check, and they got out, and Alex walked right towards me. The entrance was right behind me, and I was like, I asked him politely if it would be okay with him if my friend Stevie took a photo of us together. I had not thought about doing this, but Stevie happened to have her camera with her that day. So he was very nice, and he said, of course. And as he stood next to me, as I told you, there were hormonal things going on that I didn't. This is all a brave new world for me. And I think I could maybe safely say that that's the first time that my hormones had an immediate reaction to a very charismatic man. It was the way he smelled triggered something in my brain, and so I'm having this incredible upwelling of hormones and not knowing what the hell to do with them, right? So he's saying to me, I'm telling him, I've been a huge Rush fan. I'm a huge Rush fan. He goes, oh, well, you're a unicorn. And I'm like, what? And he goes, you're a female Rush fan. You're a unicorn. And I was like, oh, yeah, the biggest, baddest unicorn you're ever going to meet. So as we're standing there talking, and I'm having a hormonal overload and about to melt into a puddle into the ground, Neil Part is standing maybe 5 feet to the right of us, and as my friend is taking a picture, she took a few, this professional photographer, I assume he was, because he walked up to Neil, and he had a huge camera with a telephoto lens that had to have been easily a foot long, and he kind of lifts his camera and he says, may I take a photo of you? And Neil says, no, you may not. And the dude really quickly lifts his camera and takes a picture of Neil anyway. And there's this like 3-second pause where it's kind of like what it feels like right before lightning is about to strike. It's like the atmosphere got electric and tense, and me, and if you look at me and Alex in this picture, it was happening right as the picture was taken. So Neil, there's this pause. Neil grabs the dude's camera and rips it off of his neck. And I mean, he had it around his neck on a leather strap, and the leather strap broke, okay? And he ripped it off the dude's neck, and he throws it on the ground. And I don't mean he drops it. I mean, he threw it on the ground, and it shattered, and he started jumping up and down on it. I swear to God. Okay, so that's what's happening right now. Oh, dude. Okay, there you go. As... Here, oh, these freaking. Here, let me try to angle it better so you can. Does that help? That's not helping. Wait, it's almost there. No, oh, dude. I'm sorry, guys. Just wait. Well, you can get it. Wait, almost. There it is. Kinda. Okay, sorry. Can you kind of see it there, guys? Yeah, you can see it. All right. So you see the expression on our faces. Well, that's because Neil Part is jumping up and down, having a hissy fit on somebody's camera. And you know what? The dude deserved it, because Neil said no, and everybody knows that Neil is a very private person. I mean, I had written Neil a story and written it out in Numenorean, okay? And yes, Numenorean from Lord of the Rings. I wrote this whole, like, Lord of the Rings, like, inspired story, and I wrote it out for Neil in Numenorean, and I was gonna give it to him, but I knew how private he was, so I didn't know, how I was gonna do it. But after I saw him destroy this guy's camera next to me, let's just suffice it to say that the story that I wrote up for Neil Part never got into his hands. So after Neil had destroyed this guy's camera and turned around and stormed into the backstage area, Alex turns around and looks at me, puts his hand on my shoulders, and he goes, just another day in the life of Rush. So that was the incident of me meeting Rush. And the last thing I'm going to tell you, boy, this photo is not going to, got so much glare on the camera today, guys. You're not going to see this. This leads me to the last story I'm going to tell you today about when I met Primus. Primus sucks. Yay! I love Primus so much. Okay, so I met them in 1992. I have seen Primus more than I've seen any band. At this point, I think I'm approaching 40 shows, which, by some people's standards is not a lot. I mean, some deadheads have seen hundreds of Grateful Dead shows. I only got to see 20 or so Grateful Dead shows. I was a deadhead. Maybe I'll tell you about that someday. Ooh, crazy stories. Okay. So I met Primus in 1992. I was forever going to see them open for Fishbone. Back in the day, like, they opened for Fishbone all the time, and I must have seen them at least 10 times open for Fishbone. So this is one of those instances, and I was at I think it was American University down in Washington, D.C. I was still living in Baltimore at this time. And I went to the show, and I do what I usually do. Primus music makes me dance like I'm absolutely out of my mind and insane. And Auntie Angie has really bad balance. I later learned it's part of autism, like being clumsy and impaired proprioception of knowing where your limbs are and what they're doing at any given time. So I am literally dangerous to myself and others when I dance. So I do what I always do. I separate myself. I go like in the back and I go somewhere where there's nobody around me. I mean, I learned this when I like freaking ended up headbutting some dude and we both almost passed out. So I'm in the back and I'm dancing, you know, I mean, I can't even describe, like whirling dervish times 1,000, okay? And the show was amazing. God, I love those early shows. This was like, I think they had just put out Sailing the Seas of Cheese. I feel like it was contemporary to that time, or they might have just been there. I don't know. They were somewhere in that area of their album releases. So their part of the show was over. They were the openers, and Fishbone was getting ready to come on. And so I was walking around in circles, cooling off. I mean, literally dripping with sweat. My clothes were completely wet. And I'm just, you know, I have my arms up, and I'm just walking or trying to air my pits out. And I was walking around in circles. And who walks up to me? Well, not specifically up to me, but he came right by me. Freaking Larry Lalonde. That's right. Larry Lalonde, the amazing guitar player from Rush. And there was no way I was going to let Larry Lalonde just walk right by me. So I grabbed him. I grabbed him by his shirt. And I went, Larry, that was such an amazing set, my man. He freaking blushes. I mean, he turned red. And he looks down at his feet, and he kicks his little Converse high top feet around, his shoes around, and kind of kicks them a little bit on the floor, and he goes, nice to meet you. You can call me Worm. I'm like, thinking to myself, I'm not calling you Worm. Like, you are no worm. Of course, he was talking about a different worm. He was talking about the worm at the tequila bottle. I do believe Larry's a bit of a psychedelic warrior. In any case, Larry asked me if I had any weed. And, well, let's just say Auntie Angie may have had a little bit in her car. Because I wasn't going to bring stuff like that into an auditorium. So Larry walked out to my car with me, and we got the, you could call it weed, but if any of you are from the East Coast in the 80s and the 90s, and you remember what the weed was like there, Mexican brickweed, it was like smoking dried horse shit. It was just the worst. I mean, it didn't get you high. It just gave you a headache, and it literally tasted like horse manure. And that's what I had for the guy that comes from California and is used to California weed, which by the way, I had never tried at that point, so I had no comparison, right? So we go backstage, and we're sitting on the loading dock out back, and we're smoking this terrible, terrible weed, and we're laughing about how bad it is. And I was like, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. Just East Coast weed is the worst. And so, we get to talking, and somehow well, I guess I should preface this by saying that prior to meeting them, before Fishbone came on, I went up to the backstage area inside the arena, and I grabbed one of the roadies, and I asked him if he could take this piece of paper into the back and get everybody's autograph for me, which he did, and he brought it back, and I looked at it, and I was like, why does it say no drooling? And he said, because I told Les Claypool that you were drooling for his autograph. I'm like, oh, thanks, brah. Like, I really, really freaking appreciate it. I do appreciate you getting these autographs from me, but thanks a lot for making me look completely desperate. So I don't know if you're going to be able to see these, as things have not been showing up really well, and this is pretty faded, but we've got no drooling, Les Claypool. So less. And then we got Guitar Sucks, Larry Lalonde, and then just some scribble for Herb Alexander. Okay, let's see. Can you see any of it? Can you? I don't think you're gonna see this. Wait a minute. Oh wait, there you go. Guitar Sucks and no drooling. Yes, indeed. So I had that in my pocket while I'm sitting there talking to Larry on the loading dock. The loading dock is for loading and unloading only. What's that from? Musician, you musical mavens. What's that line from? The loading dock is for well, it's not loading. The loading area is for loading and unloading only. So if you know who that is, put it down in the comments below. So I'm sitting there talking to Larry, and we start talking about our favorite bands, and I was like, well, I'm a really big Rush fan. And he was like, oh my God, are you kidding? Man, we love Rush, and you're not going to believe this, but we are opening for them this coming fall. And I was like, oh my God, dude, oh my God. I was just like, this is going to be the best show in the history of the worlds and all the multiverses combined. There will never be a better show than Primus and Rush together. Well, little did I know that later on we'd have Primus, Rush, and Ween playing together, which, okay, that's probably the best show ever in the multiverse. Okay. Anyway, so as Larry and I are discovering that we're both really into Rush, Les Claypool, clamors up, and man, that dude he's tall and lanky and has long legs. I mean, it felt like a giraffe was coming up on us or something. He walks up and he's like, I told you no drooling. And I was like, get a hold of yourself, Claypool. Just like, I'm not here for your ass, And truth be told, I was kind of crushing on Larry. It was a missed opportunity. I should have asked him out, and I didn't. Larry, I would have loved to dated you. Oh well. Opportunity missed. What are you going to do? So anyway, Les is making smarmy overtures towards me, and I'm not having it. And he's like, Larry looks over to him and he says, well, she was just about to tell me about when she met Rush. And immediately Les is in. He's into the conversation. He's over, trying to be the man about town, and he's like, Rush comes up and he's down with the conversation. And Herb was walking by and he heard me say Rush, so Herb comes over. So here I am, surrounded by Primus, telling them the story about when I met Rush that I just told you guys, okay? And as I'm telling the story, the absolute surreal nature of the situation is not lost on me. Here I am talking to one of my top 3 bands in the world about the time that I met one of my other top 3 bands in the world. And the really cool thing about it for me was that they hadn't met Rush yet. So I had a one-up on them. They really wanted to hear what I had to say. And they really enjoyed the story. And we talked about, how private a person Neil is, and then how uncool that photographer was, and how laid back Alex was. I never got to talk to Getty. Yeah, and then unfortunately the show was over and I had to drive somebody home, so I didn't, Larry didn't ask me out, and I didn't ask Larry out, and it's something that I forever regret. Although I love my incog husband very much, and all roads lead you to where you should be, at least if you're taking joyful steps. Let's put it that way. Okay. Oh geez, and something else. popped into my head. Let's see. Is it? No. Yeah, I don't know. I have so many stories, and they all just kind of like run in and out of my head. I know there's another Primus story in there somewhere, but I can't find it right now. Here, maybe my notes. Do my notes say anything? No, my notes aren't gonna help me any. Okay, well, then we're just gonna wrap it up for today, guys. I think that's plenty. There's a lot more. Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Rock and Roll Drive-By. Oh, you can't see my shirt, dude. Okay. I wore the shirt on purpose. Colonel Claypool's Flying Frog Brigade. Holy God, people. If you've never listened to Les Claypool's side project, the Flying Frog Brigade, do yourself a favor and listen to it right now. My husband and I went to see them, I think it was 3 years ago, 3 years ago now, when he was working down in Dallas, and we saw the Flying Frog Brigade play with Sean Lennon on lead guitar, and they flippin' covered Animals by Pink Floyd in total. And oh my God, people, one of the top 3 shows of my lifetime. They just tore the roof off of that place. And not just, Animals was perfect. And Sean Lennon, besides being an amazing guitar player, has a great voice, okay? Which was, Primus, you know how much I love you, but when I saw you cover Farewell to Kings by Rush, all right, the music was absolutely perfect and on point, but the singing, guys, I'm sorry, it left a little bit to be desired. But in this instance, with Sean Lennon singing Animals by Pink Floyd, it was beautiful and perfect, and the music was amazing. And then the whole set that they did of the Flying Frog Brigade music was just astounding. So, folks, never heard or listened to the Colonel Claypool's Flying Frog Brigade. Flying Frog Brigade. Sorry, I'm really impaired when it comes to turning myself the right way. There you go. Do yourself a favor. Do yourself a favor and listen to it. Okay, guys. Well, that's going to be it for me today. I hope you're enjoying these rock and roll drive-bys, and I would encourage you to please share your stories. I would love to tell some of your rock and roll stories along with mine, or just yours. Actually, tell you the truth, I'd rather tell your stories. So send them in to me at terraincogweirdo@gmail.com. Or if you would like to get a reading about the strange and unusual or missing persons, you can also send that into terraincogweirdo@gmail.com. And if you have any stories of strange and paranormal experiences, I would love to tell those stories. So please also send them in to me at terraincogweirdo@gmail.com. Okay, guys. Well, thanks for being here today for Rock and Roll Drive-Bys Part 2. And we'll see you next time. And until then, bring the light and fly your freak flag high. All right, babes. We'll see you next time here on Terra Incogweirdo, the land where para is normal. Slango fall, you most beautiful Incogweirdos. Bye-bye.